So, I mean, Iceland has become extremely popular lately. The growth in tourism has been phenomenal. And people thought that an economic crisis and 2 volcanic eruptions would kill the tourism. But instead, the economic crisis meant that Iceland all of a sudden became competitive in prices, which it wasn't before. It was quite expensive before. So it became competitive in prices. So that was a very good thing. Secondly, it got worldwide attention because of the first volcanic eruption, where flights were grounded all over Europe. And thirdly, it got this nice reminder 1 year later, which didn't have any effect at all, but still got headlines all over. Because people were afraid that, oh no, I'm going to miss my summer vacation again, or whatever. So that turned the attention to Iceland, and Iceland was capable of telling stories. Really good stories of what you could find, what you could experience in Iceland. And Iceland has an amazing nature, and you can find varieties and natural phenomena that you cannot find elsewhere. It's almost extraterrestrial landscape. You'd think you were on the moon or a different planet, and actually, well. Some even think the moon landing was shot in Iceland.
I thought it was Arizona.
Yeah. But the astronauts, they came to Iceland to train before the moon landing. So Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, all of those guys, they came to Iceland to train and to prepare for the moon landing, because NASA considered that landscape to be the closest to the moon that you could get. So that's quite interesting. And not only that, when you see a sci-fi movie, chances are that it is shot in Iceland as well.
I know that's kind of what really put Iceland on the map for me. Is I had that initial interest, but then seeing landscape after landscape and diversity and that side of it, just like nowhere else in the world. It seems like it has that.
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious example is Walter Mitty, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. And he goes to Greenland, Iceland, and Afghanistan in the film. And it showcases a lot of sites of Iceland. And actually, all 3 countries are shot in Iceland. Because you've got it all there. You've got the deserts, you've got the glaciers, you've got the volcanoes. It's all there. So that's something that film people love, of course, and because you can have high mountains that are down by the sea, so they're easily accessible. There's a paved road all the way. There's access to electricity, and there's no altitude sickness. So that goes a long way, and it's only 3 hours from the international airport, or even less. So that is a huge benefit. And Game of Thrones was shot there, Interstellar, Star Trek, Star Wars, Prometheus, Oblivion, Noah, Fast 8. They're transporting 80 cars at this moment to Iceland to shoot Fast 8. So yeah, and of course this brings a lot of attention to Iceland as well, and people realize all of a sudden, wow, all that variety in landscape and those amazing planets. They're not really some planets out there. They're just Iceland. The big ice planet in Star Wars, that's just Iceland.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that our vision of the galaxy or the universe, right, is at the end of the day, all terrestrial. It's all here. It's all just around the corner.
Yeah.
So then, what about we've seen that side of Iceland in the movies and in the narrative. We know about the banks. Now we're starting to understand more and more about the countryside and the terrain. But as a native, what's the side of Iceland that you think people miss out on, or that you really think is a something special that sets Iceland apart that people haven't quite discovered yet, or would really like to?
That's my Iceland. I grew up in the West Fjords of Iceland, and the West Fjords are, well, you can see Iceland a little bit like a dog that's lying down, with its legs and head. So this is the head of the dog, and when people go to Iceland, they don't go to the West Fjords. They go to the glaciers and the hot springs and the waterfalls and the volcanoes, and they leave out this part because it's not part of the ring road which everyone takes. But in this part, you have old Iceland. You have the small fishing villages where people still live from fishing. You have mountains. You have these desolate valleys and old abandoned farms and really charming landscape. And you have this picture of Iceland of being a place where you can really be alone. And because of all the tourists that are coming, it's getting harder and harder. But you can still do that in the West Fjords. There are very few tourists there still. And the landscape is fascinating. It reminds of the Norwegian fjords. It's in many ways very similar to the Norwegian fjords. Like in my village where I grew up, it's a huge fjord with many smaller fjords within it. Mountains reach 1,000 meters.
Wow. And straight into the sea then, basically.
Yeah, it's not vertical, but yeah, it's you can walk from the shore and just straight up 1,000 meters, and you hit the top. Well, 998 meters, but somebody built a cairn, so now you can make it to 1,000 meters. Yeah. And that's the highest mountain of the West Fjords. And also I was there at the beginning of January now, and I haven't been there in winter time for several years now, and I absolutely loved it because there's this thing that people don't realize, which is the Arctic light. And I absolutely love the Arctic light. It's a phenomenon that's really hard to describe, but you have this strange bluish purple light during the day, and it's never the same. It's always different. It's never the same.
So that's not the aurora borealis. That's
no. I'm talking about the daylight.
The daylight.
Yeah, because like in my village, we don't see the sun for 3 months. Mm-hmm. So from the late November until the beginning of February, the sun doesn't shine on the village. We are just under the Arctic Circle. So we're not above it, we are under it, so we should be able to see the sun. But because the mountains surrounding the village are so high, we can't. I remember as a kid, you would sometimes see the sun come lower and lower before it would reach the village. And when it was low enough, I could run up the hill and get some sunshine, and it's fantastic. And then when the sun hits the town, we throw a big party with pancakes.
With pancakes?
Yeah, with pancakes.
Syrup? No syrup?
No syrup. No, it's sugar or rhubarb jam and whipped cream.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, when I tell people that we don't see the sun for 3 months, people imagine, so it's complete darkness for 3 months. And that's not the case. We get daylight only for a few hours, maybe 3 hours at the shortest. But it's a very beautiful light. And the clouds it's like eternal sunset or sunrise in a way. If you've experienced this beautiful sunrise when the sun is on the way up, but you can't see it yet, and the colors that you see in the sky, well, that's the Arctic light that you have for maybe 3-4 hours a day.
It's got to be incredible. One of my favorite things about being here in Denmark is how long golden hour lasts this time of year, because you get that side of it. So I can just picture that, but with the blues and the purples. And
so you get it even longer.
That must be absolutely spectacular, especially with the mountains and the water.
It is.
Oh, wow.
It is. It's just, and for photography, it's absolutely beautiful.
And is it extremely cold, or is it?
No, absolutely not. And that's another misperception that people have of Iceland. Iceland is warmer than New York during the wintertime.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. And we don't get extreme cold because it's an island and we have the Gulf Stream that warms it up. The same as with the coastline of Norway. So we don't have extreme colds. It doesn't happen. The coldest that I've ever experienced is minus 25 degrees, and that was in Greenland.
Wow.
That was not in Iceland. I don't think I've ever been lower than I don't think I've ever reached 20 degrees minus in Iceland.
Yeah, and so that's Celsius. So that, I mean, talking about that, that's significantly warmer than what you get into Wisconsin or Chicago or areas like that, you know, in the Midwest, right?
Yeah.
So it's
that's correct. That's correct.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean the average temperature in Reykjavik, the capital, in January, which is the coldest month, is 0 degrees. It's not even minus degrees.
You know, that actually does make sense, because I at the time I was looking at it thinking it was a case of extreme weather, but I was caught in Istanbul. It was -6 Celsius. And I remember looking at Reykjavik, and it was a cold spell there, because in Cappadocia got -21. It was very cold. And then looking at Reykjavik, it was like +6 or something like that. I'm thinking,
how can that happen?
The world has gone crazy. But I guess it was just normal for Reykjavik, and I just didn't.
And I mean, sometimes in the wintertime, Reykjavik is the warmest city in Europe.
That's amazing. So that explains then how, because you have this picture of inhospitable snowdrifts and volcanoes and that side, but it explains why it's been so successful.
Yeah, but you have that too, and that's the thing. The temperatures are not extreme. The wind is.
Okay.
And that's something you need to watch out. The wind can be quite dangerous, and we have hurricane strains regularly during the winter times. You know, and it can. We have storms that are over 30 meters per second regularly, with wind gusts that can go over even 60 meters per second, or even 70 meters per second. The highest I've heard of is 71 meters per second, I think, which was the remains of Sandy.
Okay, coming all the way up.
Yeah. Huh. I was stranded in Greenland for 4 days because of that.
But that's an interesting challenge then. Is how do you build, or how does that change the houses and the towns then, if you're building for wind like that, right? That would otherwise.
Well, there are very strict building regulations in Iceland, and I mean, Iceland used to be part of the Danish kingdom. You don't see any houses in Iceland that are built the way people build houses in Denmark. Not a single one, because it's illegal.
Interesting.
Yeah, you cannot build brick houses in Iceland, unless it's just one floor, and nobody bothers. So nobody builds brick houses. Houses like you have in you know, we feel like paper houses that you have in the States.
Oh, Arizona! I mean, that stuff would get swept away in a heartbeat. Yeah, it would be amazing.
So we build from reinforced concrete. Almost every house is reinforced concrete, or it's wood. And if it's wood, it's really strengthened. And I mean, I was at some point looking at importing a wood house from Denmark to Iceland, and I noticed that I don't know what you call it, but the wood that you put the roof on.
Yeah. The roof joists or
whatever it's called. You need to have twice as many in Iceland as you do in Scandinavia.
To keep the roof.
Roof on because of the wind, and still we have regularly roofs that are blown off houses.
Okay.
And it's because the wind is so extreme. It's also the reason why we don't have trees. It's getting better because of climate warming. So the trees are having a bigger chance, and they are growing. And all of a sudden, I had apple trees in my garden. Climate change is real. I promise you. I've noticed in Iceland. But we have this saying in Iceland that if you get lost in a forest and you can't find the way, all you have to do is stand up. Because the trees are so low.
Right, just blown scrub.
Yeah, and it's because of the wind, primarily. Because the wind keeps it down and makes sure, you know, if it's a big tree, it just blows. And I remember the first time I experienced a storm in Denmark in 1999. It's a storm that people still talk about here in Denmark, because it was the big storm of the century. You know, and this is, you know, the 99th year of the century, so it was a big storm.
Right.
And I was outside and like, this isn't a storm. This is just, you know, a bit windy. Yeah, it's but it's nothing to speak of. But then people were dying, and I was like, what's happening? How can that be? How can people be dying in this wind? And then I realized it's because of all of those trees and the kind of roofs that people have here. So trees were blowing over cars and killing people, and roofs were taking off, and we don't have any roofs where you have those tiles.
Yeah, the roof tiles that just come right off.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we have no roof tiles. You don't have that. So roof tiles were coming off and killing people. But, we don't have those things in Iceland, so that's why it doesn't kill anyone.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's amazing to think about, just the beautiful impact that it has on the landscape, and how many of those landscapes, I guess, wouldn't exist without the wind, right? Because then you have the trees, and you have all the scrub and everything that would grow up and completely change that landscape.
Yeah, because this is of course the shaper of the landscape. So we have volcanic ashes and wind are the primary shapers of the landscape in Iceland. And then of course the sea, which breaks off the land and creates those fantastic sea cliffs.
It just sands and polishes everything, right? With the mixture of the two, the wind and the volcanic ash then.
In some places it does, yes, in beautiful formations.
Wow.
You know that from Arizona, so
yeah, absolutely. With the wind and the sandstone.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's even stronger in Arizona than it is in Iceland. But we have a certain type of when you have a volcanic eruption and a glacier.
Underneath it.
Yeah, underneath the glacier, the ash can't get out into the atmosphere, so it's trapped, and it creates this kind of rock that is soft. And through time, that kind of rock can get shaped and by the wind. But it's very young rock, so it doesn't have the extremes that you have in Arizona.
Yeah, some type of tufa or something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to go.
I recommend it.
Yeah.
It's like a different plant.
How far is it from Reykjavik up to the Western Fjords?
Well, that is relative. It's not that far in distance. I mean, I can see the same mountain from Reykjavik as I can see from the West Fjords.
Okay, so quite close.
Yeah, but it's from the other side. So that is Snæfellsjökull, which is the volcano where what's his name? The French sci-fi author from the 19th century, Jules Verne.
Yes, Jules Verne. Yeah.
Yeah, the journey to the center of the earth.
Oh, that's set in Iceland.
Yes. The sci-fi was taking place in Iceland already in the 19th century, but that volcano is visible from both Reykjavik and the other side. So there are two big fjords separating them. But it takes a long time to drive because the roads are getting better. But when I was growing up, it took about 8 hours because you would drive all the fjords. So the distance was maybe just to get 500 meters. You had to drive 6 kilometers.
Right, around all the way.
Yeah, all the way in the fjord and then back out again, and and then over mountains, and so the roads are quite tricky.
But that's a profoundly scenic drive then.
It's so beautiful. It's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. I try to drive every time I go there because I love the view, and it's never the same. If it's the fall, you get those beautiful fall colors, and if it's winter, you get this white, bluish colors, and it's always changing. So it's absolutely beautiful. But it takes today on modern roads about 5-6 hours to get to the West Fjords.
But it's all connected, so you don't necessarily have to do ferries or anything along those lines.
There is a ferry, and you can do that as well. And there's a fabulous stopover if you take the ferry. There's an island called Flatey. There are only a few families that live there. There's this tiny little village. All of the houses are probably around 100 years old, and there are no cars on the island, and it's just going back in time. Fascinating place. And if you go further to the area where I grew up, there are some, my favorite place on earth is in my home fjord. I may be a little biased, I know, but still. And it's this deserted valley, and it's got a swimming pool. There's a swimming pool there. and it's just free for anyone to just jump in and take a swim, and you just change clothes in your car, or you go skinny dipping, and it's just warm water that just comes up from the ground.
So it's with a thermal pool coming up.
Yeah,
so
it's a geothermal pool.
Oh, that must be amazing.
And going there after a long hike in the summer, just lying there in midnight, and you have the midnight sun at the opening of the fjord. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It's just, you can't beat it. The serenity, it's fantastic. It's absolutely.
You have to. The stars and everything else must be just incredible. Like you're just floating in the sky.
No, because it's you don't see the stars in the summer. There are no.
Oh no, yeah, it's summer. Yes. Yeah.
So it's just midnight sun.
Sunny, yeah.
So it's like sunset for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Or something like that. Sun goes down, but not really, and then it goes up again. So it's
Must be incredible.
Yeah, it is.